We're the members of a dying breed. That's why we gotta stick together.
I saw the ocean so darkened with blood it was black, and the sun fainting away over the lip of the sky.
Truth in R.
Forward, as occasion offers. Never look round to see whether any shall note it. Be satisfied with success, even in the smallest matters, and think that even such a result is no trifle. And that's not trifle the cake, by the way. And that was a quote by Marcus Aurelius, one of the Roman emperors, famous for his stoicism, stoic philosophy. And he was active about 161 to about 180. And that will bring us into today's episode of the Truth in Our podcast. I'm your guide, Connor, joined by the stunning and brilliant Antoni.
Thank you, Connor.
And today's episode is on success. And the reason this episode is, the follow-up to the last episode, which is on pilgrimage and the internal pilgrimage and what it means to go through what we kind of talked about, finding the inner temple of truth and stuff like that. And actually, I brought up the topic with Antoni because I feel like I'm struggling actually with understanding what success is, and primarily because we talked about this a little bit in the last episode and the one previous, about sort of forgetting anything you know in order to undertake this journey or this exploration. And this is why we refer to it as pilgrimage in the last episode. And it sorry, pardon me. It relates, and the reason, or at least the reason I was finding this struggle with understanding the concepts of success is primarily due to the fact that I felt like it had to be something, or it had to be, like there had to be a certain goal attached to it, or you can't move forward in life. Interestingly enough, is what Marcus Aurelius was saying in the first quote: "Forward, as occasion offers." And my let's say my dealings with it came back to the pilgrimage and knowing what we know, which is the first episode, and sort of stripping back all those ideas and concepts to, interestingly enough, we were just watching a video on it, to go back to sort of nothing and start from a childlike perspective, sort of. Do you have anything to add? Or rather, what do you feel the topic of success means, and how does it play, and how do you forget? How do you forget that?
Well, based on that last episode where we were talking about, I was expressing my desire to essentially burn down this wall that I felt was around me of preconceived ideas, concepts, definitions, expectations, many of whom belong to the category of societal norms, or even kind of things, things you think you know the meaning of, and you apply those meanings, those concepts to your life. And success, I've decided success is the first one that's got to go, because for quite a long time we've both been on this kind of confusing journey of trying to understand what success is. And so when we found this quote by Marcus Aurelius, I really liked it, and still really like it, because it mentions a few of the key aspects that are problematic. Because the first thing he mentions is go forward. Go forward. Just in whatever way you can. That's the occasion part. And he says, then he goes on to say, don't bother about other people's opinions, reactions, whether anyone cares or doesn't care. The whole point for you is just going forward. And, some of the things we've been really talking a lot about with this word success is, it's like the word love. You know, everybody has their own subtle understanding of what it means, right? Especially about how it feels. So success is one of those ones where I've found myself expecting any success that I achieve to have characteristics that have got nothing to do with me. The characteristics of society says lots of money, or a good social position, or a good, in inverted commas, job, whatever. And it depends on what society you're in, what time period you're in, the people you're talking to, how all those things are measured. But it's all kind of externally measured stuff, right?
Yeah.
And
Precisely.
that's where I think that's why I'm burning success first. Because when we were talking about doing this episode and you asked me, you know, what was a moment of success that I experienced, I actually kind of went blank. And I realized it was because I genuinely don't understand anymore what that really means. Because I've done things in my life, as all people have. I've had those moments which should have felt great, that were the pinnacle of an achievement, you know, of working hard or whatever. And yet it's sort of like bubblegum. You know, you pop that big bubble, like you blow the big bubble and you're like, yes, I'm doing it. And then it pops. And then you've got nothing left, you know, and you've got to start again. And that has become so profoundly frustrating. And so this quote from Marcus Aurelius, this bit where he says, be satisfied with success in even the smallest matter. And basically, and don't underplay that result. Don't think it's nothing just because you host a happy dinner party with your friends and you cook some nice food. And you don't think of that as success. You just think of that as you having dinner with your friends. And he's pointing out that success is all those achievements that go well, basically.
Yeah. Well, a few things to point out, and you raised some really interesting points, primarily the one being about external factors dictating successful stories, let's put it that way. But the very textbook definition, which we actually opened up on, what's it called, Merriam-Webster's dictionary, I think literally just said an aim or a goal or a purpose that has been achieved, you know. That's success. And people don't look at it like that, because truly, if like for example, you were mentioning the dinner party, the goal was to have a dinner. It doesn't actually matter if it was a good or bad dinner. The goal was to have a dinner, right? The dinner was made, the guests ate, and there was some drinking. They drank, you know. That is a success, you know.
Well,
but people don't look at it like that, because first off, they might have not set it as a goal within themselves. So, again, looking at the very dry textbook definition of it, that would have been a success. And the key factor that I actually wanted to mention was about these external factors and the measurement of success, quote unquote, being dictated by society or something similar to society. But the thing I wanted to mention about that was actually to do with attachment of identity. Success being the identity of culture or society. So what I mean by that is, let's say when one's trying to develop themselves or find an inner knowing, they're actually trying to detach themselves from any concept of who they are, right? Whether it be I'm male or female, woman or man, whether I'm this sexual orientation, whether I'm a rich person, a poor person, or whatever. These are all attachments to a certain persona you create, right? So we've created this persona for ourselves, and it's our sort of shell of security, or security shell. And I believe society's one is this concept of success. And the interesting thing is that this concept of success breeds the biggest amount of insecurity. And I'll give you an example. Fitness freaks, right? People who have what society might consider to be a desirable body, right? One that's chiseled in this way or that way. And I have known a lot of people that have this chiseled, let's say, look or whatever, or this desirable appearance by society's norms. But when I know these people quite well, a few of them, but they happen to be the most insecure, body-conscious people that I know, more so than anyone else. I'm not exactly, fitness freak dude who goes to the gym all the time, but I have zero body issues. And according to society's idea or this culture's idea or identity towards a successful story or whatever, I shouldn't be happy or whatever, or something like that. Yet it's not something I attach myself to. I don't attach myself to that identity. And I think this concept of success has been disfigured, I suppose, in a way, or turned into something that is not really useful anymore. It's like people chase something that, like, the dragon, the pink dragon, when you're taking the idea of heroin and you see this pink dragon, you chase it, and you never.
Pink dragon?
Yeah, or something like. Okay. I think this is like.
Anyway,
this ideal or whatever, and the idea behind it is that you can never catch it, right? And this is what I believe to be or experience to be this idea of success in the culture of today, in the society of today. That you're chasing this thing that can it's unattainable to some degree. Because even when you see billionaires and whatever, they just keep trying to get more and more of that money. Or if you're one of those fitness people, more and more of that fitness, if that makes sense. It's like you can't really get it because you're looking for it outside. And I think that's the main thing, is that success is this thing that's created externally to you. And you can never actually control how that is dished out, if you will. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's all I got to say about that one, or that part at least.
Right. I think what you were saying about that it's attached to these external ideas is exactly pointed to in that quote, which is, don't look around to see if anyone notices your achievement. And part of this pilgrimage journey definitely requires the breakdown of the idea of success, other than, as Marcus Aurelius says, forward, just moving forward, moving toward that destination, which we identified in the last episode as the Temple of Truth being the first stop. And that the only requirement is that you get there sooner or later, hopefully, and that would be success. But how it looks in our everyday life, that's a different thing, because I find every day sometimes it's very large moments, and sometimes it's a tiny little microsecond thought of, I'm not succeeding because I don't have any external thing to show anybody that, oh, look at me, I have this nice object here. I have this career, which is kind of like a train on its tracks, that, oh, look at me, my career is this train on this track, and each day, each month, whatever, I'm moving forward or on to the next stop or something. And I find myself just not relating to that at all, and feeling feeling bamboozled actually by it, having spent, my life trying to tick those boxes, going to uni, getting that degree, doing all those things, and just finding that it is like the bubble gum. Once it pops, it's like, wow, that was a lot of effort to just have sticky face, And so I'm wondering if the word success or the notion of success needs to even be replaced. Like if you rip that out of your persona, of your conscious daily activities, then what? Do you lose motivation? I think we use the word success actually as the carrot that motivates us to get from here to there.
Yeah.
Because when we actually achieve the there part, we feel empty. Maybe not everyone feels that way, but I know we certainly have had many experiences like that.
Yeah. No, it's weird because I was thinking about that thing. I mean, exactly when you were talking right now about this carrot on a stick, and there's kind of like a moral attachment to it because you could successfully go out and kill someone. Like you're successful in that. Like well done. It's like what is the like what are we trying to look for? Because I think. Like, let's say you replace the word or just delete it, right, from existence. What is it then people do? Do they do job well dones? Do they...
yeah, but that's better.
Yeah, it's better. It's better.
Praising the fact afterwards.
Exactly, but it's... The success part of it is a personal one to some degree, while the job well done is someone's recognition, essentially, of your success, maybe not even. Because I think... If you remove the barriers of morality, let's say societal morality, not something that's beyond, let's say cosmically, there is no such thing really. And there's no question about whether one thing's right or wrong. But today, there is a barrier for most people to go out and commit crimes, right? There's a few that isn't. And we try and organize society in a way where there's fewer people of that. But if you were to remove that from yourself, you could go out and successfully be a criminal. And that is a successful thing because you have chased that carrot on a stick and you've done it. But there's a moral aspect to it, right? A societal / moral aspect to it, where we prefer you don't do that. And by we, I mean everyone in the tribe. Let's put it that way. We prefer you don't go out and steal. We prefer you don't go out and kill people or whatever, or try and damage the society in some way. But you could be successful at it. A lot of people are. Just look at the mafia, for example, right? Or any sort of criminal organization. So it comes down to, I think, obliterating the idea entirely of what successful even means. Because it's the identity, the attachment to this idea that it has to be a sort of, well, A, a moral thing nowadays, and B, because a moral thing and also a very strongly material thing. It's like if you cannot tell if you're walking down the street and you see a very poor person or even a homeless person, their internal world, it could be so much more aware than yours, in a sense where they themselves have transcended beyond the idea of even owning anything material, right? Let's talk about even like the Franciscans or whatever. But you walk by and you think, I don't want to be that because I don't have that Lambo, that Ferrari, and that benchmark of what society's telling me is a successful thing to do. But internally, they are in a far better position than you, in my opinion, because, okay, I think the internal state matters more than what your external state is. They're surviving like everyone else. And I think, there we go, that's it. The idea of success today, in my belief, is that it's the ultimate way of survival. How well are you surviving in this world? Not so much of how are you transcending your own barriers, but rather where you've raised that bar of survival so high that you could lose a lot and still live. You could still eat tomorrow, right? But that is such a basic way of looking at a successful life. It's like, yes, every bird is successful because he goes out and eats every day. Maybe he might be unsuccessful in mating, but he's still surviving, right? And that is what animals do. Yes, we are animals per se, but we are more than that. You know, we have the ability to be more than that. So our success should not be derived from how well we survive in this world, but how we choose to treat each other, how we choose to treat ourselves. You know, do we give a shit, sorry, pardon the French, about our own being, you know? That should really be what success is. Do you care how you are and how you live, you know?
I think that's absolutely correct. And I think perhaps one way of looking at it is, if I lost all my material security, what would I have left? You know, if it was just me, what have I got left? Because then you have to look internally, right? But I think you're absolutely right that we've been reduced, and I don't think this is new. You know, it was obviously around in Marcus Aurelius's time too. But the fact that you can still try to play the game, you try to follow all the rules, and it doesn't give you anything. It doesn't give you security. It doesn't give you peace of mind. It doesn't give you a sort of a recognizable status. In my experience, repeated experience, societal status is based, but this is just my experience. I understand that it's obviously there are many examples of the opposite, but societal status is based primarily on your behavior. That your wealth is one thing, but if you're wealthy and you behave badly, your status in people's minds and hearts is a lot lower than your bank account, right? Yeah. And vice versa. You know, that someone who is a benefit to the society, even in the fact that they're just polite to people, and they behave in an enriching way to other people, their worth in their little community or whatever is greater than their bank account, probably.
Yeah, it's true. Like, yeah, exactly. On a let's say a collective basis of how you treat your fellow being. Certainly, I agree to that sense, and I think maybe people should stop looking at trying to be successful and maybe try to be better, if that makes any sense. But better in, again, not a moral way of being better, but better, I suppose, than you were yesterday. I mean, it's pretty. Please.
If I can just add something to that, when in the last episode, one of the things we were talking about was, you asked me, you know, how would I know what concepts and ideas to keep? And my answer was, I'm only going to keep that which enriches me. And the word success and the concept of success doesn't enrich me. And also the word better and the idea of better, even if you say without moral, it has a moral undertone. It's hard to get away from it. Yep. You know, that's just the way it's become. Perhaps it wasn't always that way. But I go back to engaging in those activities and modes of being that enrich my life. And I think of the example that happened just today when there was a very fragile old lady asking for help.
Oh, yeah, today.
Right, today. And we couldn't really understand what she was asking for. And anyway, after a little bit of conversation, it turned out that she was simply asking for someone to help her cross the street with her bags because she had very, very fragile bones. And Connor went ahead and helped her across the road. And that moment, we were with some friends. So there were 4 of us, and the lady made 5. that moment of watching you kind of cross the road, I could feel and see the joy that flared up in you at being able to so simply and directly help another human being who needed help. But the beautiful thing on top of that was the three of us who were the witnesses of that situation also felt uplifted. We also felt the joy of that human sharing. And that is a really straightforward and apparent way to enrich your life. Not being like a predatory old lady helper waiting on street corners, grabbing their bags, because I've tried that and actually it doesn't go across that well. Yeah. But the idea that actually, if you use the word success, which I genuinely feel has no meaning anymore for me, but that, does it, as Marie Kondo might say, does it spark joy when you do it? And if the answer is yes, then big tick. And perhaps that's what we have to exchange, the word, a concept such as joy rather than success, or something like that. Maybe joy feels a bit too big and too intimidating because it seems like a really big word for us, especially, I think, intellectual, westernized. And I don't say that as a negative thing at all. I think it's an incredible thing. But we as intellectual, westernized people, sparking joy can take quite a lot for us. Right? But we can say, does it uplift me? Maybe joy is a bit too big, but does it uplift me to engage in this activity? Does it fulfill something in me to share this with someone else? Then that's a yes. That's a sign that I don't know, I was going to say that you are the carrot, but I don't even know what I mean by that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for the kind words, I suppose I'll start off with. Didn't expect that in this podcast. Yeah, that was a real recount of today. But it's interesting that you're actually mentioning that because we were just drinking these teas and they're called yogi teas. Disclaimer, does not make you a yogi. I think there's a bit more work involved in that. And this one actually said, the art of happiness is to serve all. And that's a little bit of what you were just talking about. Although, having said that, happiness is not being the goal here, but it's just simply what the art of happiness is, and how one goes about doing it. I think the side of happiness is involved, or let's say included in the living of life, but to its maximum. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you, but it's just occurred to me that you're absolutely right. The happiness is sort of the byproduct. That's like the joy. But it occurred to me that actually that happiness arose through being useful. Yes. To being helpful to another person, useful to another person, that the purpose is self-evident when you just do that.
It's true.
Rather than chasing the purpose, because it says to serve all.
It's true, to serve all. And I think also another thing to mention on that as well is you got to be useful to yourself. I think primarily before you start being useful to other people, because you're just going to be a wreck, frankly speaking, if you can't just be useful to at least yourself, and the rest, even after that, helping just one person, it will be the let's say the epitome of living life to its fullest to some degree.
I think that's absolutely a beautiful sentiment. What you just said there is like helping another person, helping another human being is living life to the fullest. That I think that you have it right there. That's the secret, is to actually believe that is enough. You don't have to help the whole world. You can help one person. Then the question becomes, well, how do I do that without hunting for people to help? Preying on others. I think,
that I believe is pretty easy to answer, and you don't have to be looking for it. That's number one.
Yeah.
But you got to start with yourself, because then anything else will be easier to just be with.
Yes.
So whether it be helping another person in any capacity, if it's just talking to them, helping them cross the road or whatever, if you can do that with yourself first and at least try and experience what that means, because I think that's the key thing here, is experiencing it.
Yeah.
Because again, to know is to experience. Anything else is nothing, is not knowing, you know. It's just reading it or whatever, you know. Yeah. So I think that's a very important point.
It's interesting also because it makes me realize very much about going back to this incredible quote that even on the surface seems pretty simple and you just nod your head and think, oh yes, it's absolutely self-evident. But when he says, even in the smallest matter, and think that even such a result is no trifle, like, you know, even the smallest matter, that idea that by being kind to yourself, which we were talking about yesterday, sorry, not yesterday, in the previous episode, but being kind to yourself, being useful and helpful to yourself, what that means is that you then become more sensitive to life because you're going through that process. You're paying attention to those inner realities and you're more likely to have a smile on your face, right? Because you're at peace with yourself. And so if you go out and you have a smile on your face, I have seen, we've talked about this before on the podcast, how just a persistent smile can break down the most incredible barriers with people. Just, you know, that a human smile is such a powerful, powerful and contagious joy.
Yeah, absolutely. It's contagious in the best way.
Of course.
As well, yeah. Much stronger than despair as well. Although I think despair is quite a strong emotion as well, having said that. And contagious in the worst way. But the thing there is you have a choice. That's what makes you human. You know, you have a choice. Every day you get that choice. And Sadhguru talks about this a lot. In fact, it's not Sun Tzu, Lao Tzu. Maybe it's Lao Tzu. Sun Tzu was the war guy. Same thing for him. He mentioned that as well. You know, I wake up and I make that choice. To do I choose to suffer or do I choose to be, well, joyful was the term they used. I think you can extrapolate 100 different terms from joyful. But I think fundamentally it comes down to, do I choose to live life? You know, do I choose to live this life, or am I just going to walk blinded?
Like sleepwalking, you mean?
Or sleepwalking, yeah. Because even blinded, at least you're still conscious. You know?
It just occurred to me that one of the things about not sleepwalking is you see other human beings. So that lady today, you know, we saw her because we weren't being blinded by our phones or by our worries or by our conversation. And, you know, I've been blinded by all of those different things before. But, you know, going back to this, maybe as a way of a wrap-up, but going back to this thing about the pilgrimage is tearing down this pillar, this post, the signpost that says success on it. I feel that it's such a relief. It's such a relief to say to myself, you know what, I don't know what that means, but I do know what it means to be kind, and I do know what it means to be helpful, and I do know what it means to smile and laugh at stuff. I don't know what it means to have success, because the versions that I've had still left me empty afterwards. So as a way of ending the episode, I'm going to say that success isn't a word that, or a concept that exists for me anymore. And that, you know, I feel really excited that the first signpost of that wall of concepts is down, although I want to torture all of it. So maybe we'll do that next time. Maybe
it's one step at a time. Not quite a bonfire yet. Okay. Although, hey, I'm all for bonfires. Let's nuke it. Anyway, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you find that you can tear down your concept of success, or the opposite, you find out what it actually truly means for yourself, and that it is part of the truth. Not your truth, but the truth. Thanks for listening. We'll see you guys in the next episode.
Bye now.
It's not a world of men.
We did a hat show of hats I wear that are made up of alienated...
It is not a world of men machine.
There's a how here. Why
World
are,
of
why
clock
are these
watchers.
wonderful swimsuits that Julia wears,
Bureaucrats.
among others, why are they so...
Office holders.
Wow, they're well made.